Today, I'm excited to welcome Pat to the podcast. Pat is a firefighter, nurse, and a paramedic, and a Bitcoin advocate. Welcome to the Bitcoin Age, Pat.
Paula, hi everyone in Bitcoin Edge audience. Glad to be here. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have met you. You have an amazing Bitcoin story. But before we get to your Bitcoin journey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My background, Pat O'Brien, up from the United States in the New England, Boston area. That's where I was born and raised. Right now, currently, where I'm sitting right now talking to you through the magic of the internet, I'm in southern Brazil in a state called Santa Catarina on the coast. Yeah, 20-year veteran of the fire services, many years as a nurse and a paramedic. And I'm slowing down a little bit now. I'm starting to slow down my output of work, and I'm trying to transition into a slower lifestyle, healthier lifestyle, try to live more instead of working more. And that's my goal. So I am transitioning into retirement very shortly, and I'm lucky to be able to do so.
Well, that's wonderful. And I'm sure you have worked hard to get there. Bitcoin has been a part of that. Tell us about your Bitcoin journey.
Bitcoin's Bitcoin has been a huge part of my journey. And I just like to say before I get into anything, I'm not an expert of finance or economies. I didn't study it in college. I don't come with a pedigree of working at Goldman Sachs or all these big banks. I wasn't a bond trader. I'm not even a big internet personality. I mostly use the internet and X and social platforms to do research. But my Bitcoin story, there's thousands of Bitcoin stories. Mine starts off as a sad story, but as of right now, in January of 2025, it's a happy story. People say when bad things happen, you got to look for the silver lining. That's not really possible while it's happening. But in hindsight, it's amazing when you look back on it, there are positives that have come out because of my story. 2016, what was Pat O'Brien doing? I was a regular guy, a working guy as a firefighter. My schedule allowed me to work other jobs. Many firefighters, tradesmen, work second jobs, sometimes three jobs, which I was doing. I was working as a firefighter. I was teaching at a college, paramedicine. I was working as a nurse, working for an anesthesia group, pediatric surgery, general anesthesia. So I was quite busy. And I also had a small business teaching emergency response. So you could say I had four jobs. Now, everything was going great. I'm on top of the world, newly married, just got newly married, and everything. We had big dreams, me and my wife, Sil. She's Brazilian. That's what found my way down to Brazil. But as soon as we get married, I go to the doctor because of a pulled muscle that wouldn't go away in the lower left-hand quadrant of my abdomen. And the doctor said, eat more fiber, stop exercising. I was really into exercising at that point in my life. Okay, so I did. I ate more fiber, I stopped exercising. It didn't get better. And I knew something was wrong, so I went back again. This time, it was not my primary care physician, it was a nurse practitioner. She was married to a firefighter, and she says, I want you to take a poop test, an x-ray, and a blood draw. I said, okay. Came back negative. She says, eat fiber, don't exercise. And before I walked out of that office, something flickered in her head, and she said, you know what, on second thought, why don't you get a CT scan with barium contrast? And I'm a nurse, and I said, geez, it's really not in protocol. And she said, well, it'll make me sleep better at night. So I did. And when I did, they found a spot in my upper right-hand quadrant of my colon, and I got diagnosed with colon cancer after the colonoscopy. And your world stops. Your world absolutely stops. I don't even think I was 40 years old yet, and newly married, not a lot of assets, not a lot of equities, because all the money I was making, it's expensive to live in Boston. It's expensive to live in Massachusetts. It was coming in, it was going out. And I didn't think too much of the future. I didn't have the training, the background in finance. I was never taught those skills in college. So everything changes in a heartbeat. And everyone knows someone who's passed away or who's died of certain diseases. You think you have an idea of what it's like. And I saw it. I've seen people pass many times, and you think you have an idea, but you don't know until it's you sitting in that bed. So here I am sitting in the bed, newly married, and I don't think I'm going to make it through this one. I really don't think I'm going to make it. And I was actually convinced that this is bad. So what am I going to leave my wife? Your life becomes minutes, unfortunately, dollar signs. And how do you maximize what do you leave behind? And I started going into this micro thought process of everything's a dollar. Everything is something I can leave for my wife, who is new to this country, the United States. What's going to happen to her? We had a plan. So I decided to say, instead of giving her dollars, I'm going to go back to work, and I'm not going to stop working. I'm going to work right through the chemo. I'm going to muscle right through this. Maybe it'll kill me, maybe it won't, but I'm going to stockpile everything. I'm going to change the way I spend. I'm going to change the way I think about money. I'm going to change the way I think about health. And I'm going to give her everything, the most I can. So that's what I did. That was 2016. June of 2016 is when I was diagnosed. Probably didn't really get into the Bitcoin buying until a couple months later after that, but definitely right before 2017. And if any of your audience members were there at that time, it was a wild time because you caught a big run up, and I felt like a genius. And of course, 2017, 18 comes along and things weren't so great. And I didn't feel like a genius, but I didn't sell anything, and I just kept buying because I had already made that plan 2016 halfway. I was sticking by that plan. And by this time, they say you have to make it to 5 years. I'm still thinking the shoe's going to fall. I only got a couple more years left until more bad news comes. But everything was going great. And I just continued to work. That was the theory or the philosophy that I adopted. But I can pinpoint it to one event that started getting me interested in it. I was sitting in a pediatric surgery, and there's a surgeon in the anesthesia team that I was a part of. And for people who don't know, during the anesthesia, there is some downtime for the anesthesia team. As long as everything's going good, vital sign wise, you're just monitoring. And conversations take place amongst doctors while this is happening. They were talking about Bitcoin. And I laughed. And I thought, they're crazy. These are big money guys, top of the game, Harvard educated, and they're talking about this fantasy money on the internet. Couldn't comprehend it. Why don't you buy gold? Why don't you buy real estate? And they said, we already have gold. We already have real estate. And when are you going to sell? And they said a word, never. Never. I couldn't even comprehend it. And one of the fresh doctors said, geez, Pat, I thought you were smarter than that. I must have been wrong. And he went back to the surgery. And I felt like a little grain of rice in that room. I wanted to crawl underneath the bed and just hide because it was embarrassing. But you know what got me mad? I said, you know what? If these doctors, these smart guys are doing this, I don't really understand what they're doing, but I'm going to copy them. And that's why I bought my first Bitcoin, or jumping into Bitcoin. And so it's a combination of cancer and a doctor kind of belittling me in a surgical room to get me off my butt. Still don't fully understand it. We're talking 8, 9 years later. Still learning. That's my journey. That's how I got into Bitcoin. Cancer and being belittled into it. And I'm looking back on it. I'm glad that guy belittled me because it got me mad. And I started to learn. And I'm not happy that I had cancer, but there is a silver lining into it if you make it to the other side, no doubt.
So, do you think that part of your journey learning about Bitcoin and also that motivation to be there for your wife and help your wife, do you think all of that helped you recover and get healthier from cancer?
Yeah, yes, I do believe that. I don't come from a large family, immediate large family. I come from a large, I guess you'd call Irish family, believe it or not. Probably can't tell by looking at my face, but yeah, I'm half Korean and half Irish. So, but I didn't tell anybody. So I had to find my own goals. I didn't rely on people around me to help me. It was my wife and my oncologist and the anesthesiologist that I worked for. They really gave me motivation to live. Basically, I mean, of course, everyone, it's a basic motivation to live, of course. But yeah, I think I realized that I didn't know much. I was so specialized and caught up for years and years and years in firefighting and paramedicine, and I'm too specialized. I'm not renaissanced enough. There's so much I have to learn. And Bitcoin has become my second job. I'm still a firefighter primarily, but I've studied Bitcoin for 8 years. I don't know what that's equivalent to in the academic world, but and I'm still learning. That's what's amazing about this, about Bitcoin. That's what's amazing about it. It opens up the doors. Huge motivator to keep going.
Yeah. It makes us want to learn. You know, as you know, this is a time where many of the people in California are suffering. And our prayers go out to all the people
Oh,
affected by the fires in California and the brave firefighters helping them. Tell us a little bit about your work, and because it's to do with you're helping to orange pill firefighters, right?
yes. Yeah, so during that time, like I said, when I was receiving chemo, I had a port put in my chest, and I would, of course, not be at work when I was hooked up to the pump that I took home with me. Um, but when I since I was a nurse, I could pull the needle out of my chest, I could go to work, and we have something called tailboard talk, which is just a fire service word that you go over very informally calls at the tailboard of the fire truck, especially during shift change. So that's when it started in my busy firehouse. I would switch with other officers. They would relieve me, I would relieve them. And the conversation, of course, was firefighting first and foremost, but then it would switch to Bitcoin. And I would stay past my shift an hour longer every shift talking to these guys. And they didn't jump on it right away. They thought it was fantasy money, just like I originally did. But a couple of the real estate guys that were officers, they made the connection a lot quicker. And a couple of them were gold bugs, and they made the connection. So I just kept on them, and it spread. It spread to other firehouses, and ultimately culminated years later into me giving a 10-minute presentation to our union and asking for a democratic vote to allocate some of our union treasury into Bitcoin as a store of value, not an investment, just a conversion of the dollars we hold. So it kind of started in a firehouse, spread through our other fire stations, and end up being department wide. On top of that, it now bleeds out into other departments around us. Because I'm the training captain of Taunton Fire, I travel to other departments to cross train with them. And of course, once our business is done, we start talking about Bitcoin because money is on the mind of firefighters. We're workers, we're wage workers, we have families and houses, so money is important. And whenever money comes up, contract negotiations, I switch it to Bitcoin. That's how it started. Very organic, which is perfect with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is organic. It is people like me and you and some of your listeners out. So yeah, word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned in the beginning that you had four jobs as
Yes,
as a firefighter because the cost of
yes,
living is so high. And
yes.
that really is a shame, right? Because firefighters are doing a good, solid work for their community and country. And there on the side, you have to be doing many
Oh
more
yeah.
jobs. And this is because of inflation. And this is why we are at for Bitcoin, right?
Yes. So, yeah, you're absolutely, all those things you're saying are absolutely right. Now, when I first started in firefighting, the paycheck was tiny, paltry, pay cut. It was a pay cut to become a firefighter. But in lieu of that, we were given benefits, good vacations, good sick times, good health insurance, stability in the job. That was the deal. And we took zeros for pay raises, going 2 years, 3 years without a raise, while everyone else is getting raises. We're not. No overtime, it's straight pay. That's what it. And then things started turning. The inflation started kicking. Now cities have money, so they're giving us more money percentage wise, but they're trying to take away our benefits. So we're not really gaining anything. Oh, those firefighters, they got 4 or 5% raise. I wish I could get that. Yeah, but they're taking away our benefits. It's a balancing act. So that's why it's very important that union firefighters or volunteer firefighter services, any department out there, if you have a collection or a treasury, instead of just holding into money and watching it just melt away like an ice cube, think about educate your members. It's part of your job as leaders of fire services to educate them financially. I don't know why that's been skipped over in the fire services. And that brings me to how I brought it to the fire department. One of the big influences was Proof of Workforce, which is a nonprofit out of Santa Monica. They were the first fire service, first union self-custody Bitcoin that I know of in the country. The department I work for happens to be the fourth. There was two other, Barkerville and the other one escapes me, in California. So right there in Santa Monica, that's ground zero, right, or pretty close to ground zero. It's right next door to LA. But those firefighters out there putting out those fires in LA, they're progressive thinkers. They're innovators. And they jumped in some time ago now. And they don't regret it, what they're doing. And our guys thus far don't regret it either. There's a lot of talk about putting more. So proof of workforce, the guy's name was Don Bay, who I reached out to, and he kind of has the playbook down for any other unions out there, not just fire unions, police unions, nursing unions, teachers unions, tradesmen, anybody else out there needs to be guided through the process of a union taking union money and converting it to Bitcoin. Please reach out to Proof of Workforce. Very interesting. They got the playbook.
Wow. And you helped your department do that and quite a few others. That's amazing. How do they take custody of their Bitcoin? Is the Bitcoin in self storage or is it through ETFs?
No. So that's a great question. Self custody, actual Bitcoin. You really take advantage of the sovereignty and the autonomy it gives you, and it gives you more skin in the game. And part of my not pitch, I hate to call it a pitch, but part of the way I explain it to people is that I'm not trying to sell you Bitcoin. You're not investing in Bitcoin. This is solidarity and education. How do you do that? Well, the mechanism is get off of zero, buy a little bit of Bitcoin, take it off the exchange that you bought it from, and hold it in a wallet. Get used to private keys, public keys, because that's part of the deal. If you really want to be sovereign, separate from this whole other TradFi banking system that is not your friend, if you really want to be anti something, get some Bitcoin and actually hold it, because it's the only thing you're really going to own. It's hard for humans and firefighters to be told that. You don't own your house. You don't own your car. You don't own, I can't think of anything. But you have proof that you own and possess this digital commodity, this asset. And that's one of the only things that I can think of. If it does what it's supposed to do, you look back at it and thank your past self. That's how I explain it. And you don't like it too hot in the kitchen, liquidate, go back to dollars if you want. No problem.
Yeah. Well, before you get to that point, you sold me on that part, but before you get there, do you educate them on a little bit of the history of money,
Yes.
on inflation, on banking? So tell us a little bit about your orange pilling.
Yeah. I love it because I have like these little like analogies, like in the religious world and the spiritual world, highfalutin ideas. It's always good to use analogies. So, of course, you have to understand the problem of money and currencies and fiat. You have to understand that, because if you don't understand that, what's the incentive to go to Bitcoin? In the fire services, identify the problem, implement, and evaluate. It's an acronym. Firefighters are risk analyzers. That's a good firefighter at its very core mitigates risk by going through this mental process. Start with the dollar. The only function I see fiat currency providing of any use to me or anybody there is just how liquid it is. Go walk right out the door and go buy a candy bar. Other than that, there's not much to it. So I start off by, yes, of course, I recommend certain core readings. But if you want me to talk to you, Mr. Firefighter, sitting across from me, bury $1,000 in your backyard, come back in 10 years. Right now, that $1,000 could probably buy you 1,000 candy bars. In 10 years, it's going to buy you 500 candy bars. Magic. You just lost half your purchasing power. Or take $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, bury it in the ground. See what you got in 10 years. I don't know. But I bet you can buy, I would bet you can buy more than 500 candy bars. I would bet it. So you win. You win. Oh, what about bonds? What about this? Yeah, you want to go make 4 or 5%, in which inflation would just eat that right up. I don't think that's a good play for money. Equities, okay. Real estate, okay. So we start going through that. One of the best ones that I love to show people, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, Paula, and your readers are, is that simple diagram or picture where it shows the house, and it was 2014, 2016, 18, 22, 24, the price in US dollars. And then the price in terms of Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin just goes down. 6 Bitcoin now can get you a house, whereas back 10 years ago, it would cost you like, I don't know, 600 Bitcoin. I don't know. I don't even remember. But you get the point that houses are expensive in fiat. This is the best time to buy a house probably now in Bitcoin. It's the cheapest as I've ever seen it. I can go buy a house with Bitcoin and it's a steal compared to 10 years ago. And it's going to continue to go down in terms of Bitcoin. So out of those assets, house, fiat, or Bitcoin, 3 choices. Which one are you going to pick? And I just show them the graphs, and that's math. It's hard to argue against math. And I think they start to see it, but it's difficult to orange pill people. Never mind firefighters, never mind police officers. Suspicious, you know. So it's a long job. It's a long journey. But I am happy that several firefighters have personally followed me in this journey because we talk about it all the time now. We become better friends, better coworkers, and that's the solidarity that I'm talking about. And I just want the unions, the bigger organizations, to participate in what Bitcoin has allowed me and these small groups of firefighters, what it's afforded us. You know, I want to share that.
Well, and if you look at your life, you're a great example of buying Bitcoin early and going to be retiring soon, probably better than a lot of people. But I wanted
Yeah.
to just go back to what you said with orange pilling because I'm always trying to improve. And I interviewed Jim Kreider the other day. He's a certified financial planner. And what he does with his clients first is say, what have you heard about Bitcoin? Then they say it's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme. So he lets it get them off their chest so that now you can start, or you can at least answer whatever they have heard and what's wrong with it. And then you can start with, and I think I'm going to add that.
Yeah, you have to know your audience, you have to know and I think that's a good way because you have to gauge your audience. You have to understand your audience. And one of the best ways is that question you asked, what have you heard about Bitcoin? And then counterpoint all that. I can't wait until more financial advisors actually start telling people about it because I think I'm not sure why they don't. I know it has to do with laws, but I have this sneaky suspicion it also has to do with they haven't set up a means yet to profit off of it. So in other words, a financial advisor tells you to do 60-40. You got to minimize your risk and diversify. That's not the best for the person buying that. I think it's very good for the person selling that idea because they have they charge percentages on it. They charge percentages on what your account does, so they're not incentivized yet until they can figure out a way to make money percentage wise, whether they custody it for people or not. And when that happens, when the regulations really open up the floodgates and they get their education and they get their pitch down, they're going to start picking up the phone and start calling a lot of these high net worth people. And it would probably be more apt to buy it because the risk is going away. The longer Bitcoin goes on in this journey, when it hits 100,000, when it hits 150,000, the risk goes away, I think. Or it doesn't go away. I just think it gets minimized. We've made it through this. We're 16 years or so into this journey. And every month that goes by, the risk just gets reduced a little bit more. So I'm waiting for the day that these RIAs and financial advisors stop picking up the phone and stop making the telephone call. I won't answer. I mean, the people will, people will. I love that. I
You
love that angle.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You mentioned real estate, and you also mentioned that you own some real estate. Tell
Yes.
us what your planning is and why you own real estate.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to 2016. It says, I'm not going to die in a concrete room in Boston looking out the window. I'm not going to go that way. And my wife was from Brazil. And so I came down on a trip after my chemo, and she showed me this place called Bombinhas, the peninsula that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean. And it is paradise. Didn't know places like this existed because the idea of Brazil in most people's minds is this stereotypical image that you get. And it's not that. It's so diverse. It's like thinking that all Americans wear cowboy hats and cowboy boots. It's not true. It's not true. So I see this beautiful place down here, and I'm like, my God, I need to buy something because eventually, one, it's a good investment because it seemed very cheap compared to the US dollar. Number two, and maybe I want to live there when I'm done retiring. And I already started to have that idea. So one property led to another, led to another. And, it's great to have assets like property and land and farmland. That's great. And my wife is the one that really started me on that. She's more of a conservative fiscal woman, and she likes the tangibility, the ability to hold and see the terra, the ground, build a house, get passive income off of that. And that was a small bit of me that was still attached to my TradFi thought, passive income, dividend stocks, get money coming in off of rent and owning land. And, it doesn't really generate as much as you think it is. And in hindsight, now 2025, boy, I hate to think like this sometimes, but maybe I shouldn't have bought that one place over there and just aped into Bitcoin. Instead of going 50-50 with my money, instead of going 50% Bitcoin, 50% land, and doing that, what if I just went 90% Bitcoin and you start getting into that game? But it teaches you something. Bitcoin has outperformed them all. Bitcoin has outperformed all those assets. So yeah, a nice house is nice to have. You get to sleep, it's air conditioned, you got a good view. You go to sleep there, you live your life, have dinner there. That's great. But as an investment, preservation of wealth, it doesn't come close to Bitcoin. It's more of a liability than Bitcoin is. So, yeah. So now where I am in 2025, maybe it's 99% Bitcoin and 1% real estate from now on. And that 1% is just upkeep. It's just upkeep and taxes and what I have to pay. Yeah. But no regrets. No, I don't regret it because I'm happy, with how things turned out.
Well, and you still have enough to retire, and the argument you can't live in a Bitcoin. We always get that one.
What's
We
that? You can't live in a Bitcoin? Not yet. Not yet. Maybe someday.
Yeah, exactly.
Because these devs, these developers out there on Bitcoin, holy cow! I've kept company with some of them. They're real smart, and they'll figure out a way. If you can live in a Bitcoin, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, with all this AI stuff, but we'll be in like a virtual world and we won't even realize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so you also mentioned that you have a few altcoins, but
Yeah.
that you are headed mostly to Bitcoin. Are you just kind of waiting to get into all Bitcoin?
Eh, yeah, I don't know. I would label myself as 99.9% Bitcoin. Yeah, I would 99%. Now, those altcoins that I hold, they're ancient altcoins. Those were bought when I was sick, probably on chemo, going through this. I won't mention them by name, but it was Bitcoin and two or three others, maybe four others, two or three others. And those were tech plays, purely tech stock. They didn't offer anything that Bitcoin did. And I kind of understood that then. But I was stuck in this diversification mentality, and there is an emotional attachment. My wife says that I'm emotionally attached to things. We should sell that land, buy that other property over there. Oh, I kind of like that place. That's all it is. It's kind of like maybe your favorite painting on the wall or that first car that you had that you wish you didn't sell. There's an emotional attachment, but I drop them in a second. I probably would. It's just I got to get over that emotional attachment. I don't believe ever it's going to approach what Bitcoin's going to do. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is the most important technological creation, maybe besides the internet, that I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is completely normal to have an emotional attachment to some things, and nothing wrong with having a little fun on the side.
Yeah,
We understand as Bitcoiners that Bitcoin is the only money because it's decentralized. There'll only ever be 21 million. And one of your ex tweets is about Bitcoin becoming a unit of account. So
yes.
where some people are using it as a medium of exchange and a store of value. That might take a little while to fully become a unit of account, but I think we'll get there. What are your thoughts? Do you use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange?
No, I do not. There's reasons why. Right now, Bitcoin attracts people for incentives. You have to be incentivized, and Bitcoin offers so many incentives for so many different groups. I am my own particular person. I was incentivized to store what wealth I was making in terms of fiat into an asset as a store of value. That's what Bitcoin offered me. And it's been great for that. It's given me freedom to take chances and pursue things that I want to do. It's given me a little ace card in my back pocket, the fifth ace of the deck of cards. And that's what Bitcoin does for me. Now, in Brazil, say other countries on other continents, they need a means of exchange right away, either remittances from other countries or micropayments at the market. So their incentive is to use the Bitcoin network to facilitate transactions. A little bit different than me. Now, if I got paid in Bitcoin, if I could land a job and someone paid me just sats in a week or every day, gave me some sats, I would use it. I would use it and then replenish it. Take my pension money and then replenish it. So spend and then rebuy. That would start to proliferate and I would do my part into adoption. I can see that happening soon. The unit of account pricing things maybe in Bitcoin I'm still stuck in the US dollar. I have a lot of things in my head. What is the Brazilian real to the dollar? How much is that loaf of bread in reals, the reais of Brazil? And then what does that equate to the dollar? I'm still stuck in that. But then once in a while it peeks in and like, I ain't buying that. That's too many sats. So I'm starting to change a little bit in pricing things in Bitcoin. But I don't know if the rest of the world has even thought of that. And I think the means of exchange would come close, would be sooner. And I think that's just it'll take place outside probably the United States. I think maybe Americans are going to be more quicker to accept it as a store of value once they see the dollar continuing to go down. That's the incentivization for Americans. But in Brazil and South America, means of exchange. In smaller communities, unit of account. And we'll see what happens in 10 years. I think 10 years is a good amount of time for that.
Yeah, it's an exciting journey. What's adoption like in Brazil?
So, yes, I tried. I tried with immediate family, larger family, neighbors, and businesses. And so, what I do, how I try to do it for them is paper wallets. I hand out paper wallets, especially around Christmas time. I spend Christmas down there, paper wallets, and it starts the conversation. And the Brazilians love the store value idea. And I expect adoption to happen faster in Brazil. They may outpace the United States in terms of adoption. They don't have the advertising or the marketing, but the Brazilians are very keen to inflation. My wife has lived through 3 different currencies in her lifetime, and the real is losing value to the dollar. The Americans think that the dollar is losing value. Yes, it is losing value. It is going down. A nice steady slope. The real is faster, and every other currency debases faster. So they understand that. BTC now, here's a piece of paper. If you can figure out how to get this off into one of your wallets on your phone that I'll show you how to download, it's your first step. Don't sell it. Don't convert it back to reals. And I'll see you in a year. And I've done this for 5 years, 6 years now. And the ones that have kept those paper wallets, I see that I make the rounds during holidays. What do you got? Let's check it out. And they can't believe it. Unfortunately, money is so tight here. It's very tight. In Brazil, people, you have a good job, US equivalent, I don't know, a couple $1,000 a month, 2,000. You make it $2,000 a month down here, you're doing pretty well. But even that, it's taken up by gasoline prices, food, rent, or mortgage. You're working to pay for those things. Very little left over. So Some people get a little despondent about that. What's the point? So what the point is, even if it's only a few reals, put it down. It'll start to build up. Don't look at the price. Just save it in that. And if you ever need emergency money, take it out, convert it back to reals, and buy what you have to buy. Go to the doctors, get your tooth fixed if you have to. If you don't have to, keep it there. And I'll see you in 10 years. And we've already started this with probably year 5 when I started.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's all relative, right? I'm in Zimbabwe right now, and there are many people who only make 200, 250 a month. And so they do not have extra money to put in Bitcoin,
No,
and they need it the most, unfortunately. But I
they
think
do.
as technology improves and we can buy small amounts of sats on the Lightning Network, it's
Yes.
going to become important to these, third world and second world countries.
That's one of the things I'm most interested in is the scalability of the Bitcoin network and how do we get it in these layer twos and side chains that is minimize risk for people, of course, but get it into the hands of the people that can use this as a means of exchange because they don't have bank accounts, a lot of them, but everyone's got a cell phone. So there you go. And internet's everywhere. You got the internet, you got a cell phone. Your foot's in the door now. You can't use your currency. That's why Bitcoin is their incentive. That network helps them out immensely. That's what gets me excited. Scalability.
Yeah, yeah, it's exciting. And also the ease of use. For me,
Oh yeah,
I was talking to somebody in Kenya, and she can pay on an app with Bitcoin and it just converts it into whatever currency you're in. That's where we
yeah,
need to go because, you know, many
yeah.
people are not as good technology wise, and I just need it to work.
Yes, that's why I like to mention Bitcoin and some of the other poop coins out there. The other poop coins want to keep you in their system, and Bitcoin, I think the ethos, if you will, from cypherpunks and program and developer ethos, I think they will be open about this. They want to spread to other countries and allow the globe to partake in this. I don't think they're going to silo this. I put a lot of faith in these smart young people developing on this. I think their intentions are good.
How has Bitcoin changed you?
I alluded to it before. I feel free. I feel a lot freer. I'm able to take chances. And I'm very lucky. I know I'm very fortunate, not just because I survived cancer, but because of my job as a firefighter. We have a pension. I know I'm fully aware how rare that is. So even though I'd be retiring, quote unquote, young, that money that I receive is more than enough to live the rest of my life in Brazil. I mean, I can live down here. But what Bitcoin has done, it is like an ace in the hole, has allowed me to expand and do things I never had time to do before. So my head was in the books of nursing and paramedicine and firefighting for so long. And it's because I had to. I had to work those jobs to keep up my lifestyle. But now, because of Bitcoin, it's led me to Brazil, changed the way I look at the world, very calm, more tranquil. And it's allowed me to, one, go back to school if I wanted to go learn something. I never had an opportunity to before. I like learning. Two, entrepreneurial. Three, I can just go to the beach and not do much. Or four, charitable work. Maybe I will get my Make Prima Bitcoin up and running and have a formal class for some of the students, which I've started to do as well. And a couple of years ago, I started doing that with some teenagers around here. It's a little bit more difficult because my Portuguese is terrible. Thank God that Mi Prima Bitcoin has a translated version, so we can work around.
And I'm sure your Portuguese is going to improve. And that's such a wonderful course. And that would be wonderful.
I like the course, and I think it's very good for that teenage, early teens age. I think is really a core age to orange pill because their brains are still developing a little bit, but they're smart enough to know what's going on. It's not too early, and it's definitely not too late. I think it's a great, and those are our next leaders. Those are our next people going to push the envelope. And it's good to have that advantage early in life. I didn't have it, but maybe they can. No one came to me when I was 18 years old and said, "Hey, straighten up, do this." I was in the wild.
Absolutely. So many of us just were not taught about money. I never even asked that question, what is money? So
Yeah.
that's a gift you can
Isn't it
give.
a, isn't it a great scam? Isn't it a great scam? What a brilliant
It took,
devious. Like if you were
wow, and so
brilliantly
long to
devious.
figure it out. It's like I thought I was smart, but really it took me
No,
into my 40s to figure it out.
I have to admire the deviousness of it. I have to admire it.
Well, we're no longer dumb. We're no longer dumb money. So, do you think there's a spiritual side to Bitcoin?
There is a connection to be made. I think there is a connection to be made. Um, it makes you like so religions and spirituality should offer hope and comfort, right? I think that's one of the reasons, morals and ethics. Isn't this what these things offer? And I think Bitcoin does offer that. I don't think it's a big stretch to say that it is. You become more of a saver instead of a consumer. Bitcoin is full circle, brought me back to when I was a kid. Put your pennies in the piggy bank. That might have worked for my parents. That might have worked for my grandparents, but that wasn't the best advice going. That time is come and gone. So now it brings me back to saving and only buying what you need and living a little bit more frugally and zen like. And because of that, now I'm a lot more calm. So I think those are good side effects of religions and spirituality. Um, is there ethics around it? Yeah, I hope the greed factor doesn't creep in too much into this sphere because I think right now, what it's been in the years past was non-greedy. I think it was more spreading. Yeah. So I think there are some angles to it. Good question. Got to think more about that spirituality side of Bitcoin. I think it can be.
Yeah, I like the part that it's based on an honest ledger. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. You're right. Many of us come in for number go up. But I've seen it change a lot of people in that, yes, or let me speak for myself, once I take care of the money part of life, I absolutely want others to have it too. So it makes me a better person. And then I also want to continue learning and growing because I do see this as a deeper rabbit hole.
That's a better way of putting it. What I was trying to get out. If you start down this journey, you feel more emboldened, confident, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I was still on the rat wheel running around in circles, just giving away 80, 90 hours a week, and in the fire services, these guys don't make it that far after retirement. Oh, I hate to laugh because it's really sad. It's tragic because they just work nonstop. And then when they're done, they lost their whole vocation, their whole meaning a lot of times, and unfortunately, because of the exposures and the trials of the job, the exposures, stress of the job, unfortunately, these guys don't make it that far. And I'm sure it's the same with police officers and doctors and nurses too. It has to be.
Yeah. And just from talking to you today, it just sounds like for you, being in Brazil is one of the most healing places because you're not stressed. You seem to enjoy it there. And Bitcoin also allowed you to do that. So I wish you the very best. I'm so glad you came on the show today. And I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, I had a lot of fun. I love your style. You come across as very sincere and doing it for the right reasons. I'd love to talk to people such as yourself. I don't know if my story is that unique. I don't know if it's that exciting. I'm not developing anything. I'm not selling anything. I don't have a product, but it's just a story of a person who has, I guess, been lucky. And there is a way out. There honestly is a way to escape this, and it's hard. It's not easy. It's not buy some Bitcoin, you're a millionaire next year. That is not the way it's going to go. It's a good learning opportunity, and if you don't want to do it for yourself, think of your kids, think of your wife, think of your neighbors, think of your best friend. Learn about this because it is innovation, and it is coming. Nobody can stop it. No governments can stop it because that's not where it started.
And we don't want to because it's a better way, it's a better
Yeah.
innovation.
I'm a fan of yours, Paula. I really am. So thank you for having me. Thank you for doing what you do. And if I could leave a little pitch one more time about any union guys out there or wage workers out there, if you want to bring it to your leaders, please make a push because Bitcoin came from an organic spot down lower that we front ran all these institutions. You as the wage worker, the rank and file, bring it to your leadership. Convince them to start making this part of your education, your work. You know, to learn about your finances, learn about Bitcoin, solidarity as a workforce. Proof of Workforce is a great nonprofit to go to, and they have the playbook to guide you through that. In your own personal life, get Bitcoin.
And I'll put a link for that down below. I do
Thank you so
think
much.
I think your story is powerful. I think it speaks to a lot of regular people and firefighters and people, in those type of jobs. I think it's wonderful. Tell us where people can find you.
Find me? I don't know. On X
Yeah.
Spaces, I guess is one of my yeah. I'm going to change my handle to if it's available, but I guess you'd call it crypto adjudication one. Is that what it was, Paula?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll put a link to it below, and if it
Yeah,
changes,
you can, and I'll make changes. But proof of workforce, you can find me through there. But Don Bay is the creator of that, the head, the CEO guy, and he's got the playbook. You can always contact me through him. But on X, I'm at crypto adjudication or Judica one. I don't do a lot of talking on there. I do a lot of listening though. I like to jump around the rooms and listen. That's part of my job.
well, that's a nice change. We all talk too much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you again, Paula. Big fan.